wanted to thank you for coming today and taking time to help us document some of your harvest career. So I thought we'd start out by having you introduce yourself. And
I'm Rick Farris, and my father started our operation, although he'd worked as a young boy in harvest, and grandfather on my mother's side sold case steam tractors and thrashing machines in the 1920s. During the First World War, the government ran ads for people to get people to come work on thrashing crews. And my dad went at 13 years of age with his uncles to the Red River Valley near Jamestown, North Dakota.
Okay.
To work on a thrashing crew. He got 75 cents a day. And his duties was to get up at 4:30 in the morning and hitch some mules to the water trailer, and he took them down to the river and pumped a tank full of water, went up and filled the steam engine with water, and then built a fire in it. And then he went back and pumped it back full of water. And by then it was about noon, and his day was over.
Okay.
His uncles operated pitchforks, and they loaded bundles up of wheat and brought them in with horse-drawn wagons and put them on the conveyor belt that fed the thrashing machine. And it was important to have them on there just perfect so that they thrashed easy and had the heads first and all that.
Did they stay in that North Dakota area then?
Well, I think that's the only place. They worked for an outfit that had a thrashing machine, and they worked in that area.
Okay.
My grandfather was selling the case equipment for his brother that had a case dealership in Roselle, Kansas. And Dad wasn't old enough to go to the First World War, and he was too old for the Second World War. But in the late 1920s, my father helped a farmer that had a pull-type combine southwest of Dodge City.
Okay.
And in the early 60s, we went in there and found a job or the late 50s, we found a job working for the neighbor right next to that place. And we did that job until 75. In the early 1929, my grandfather had married my grandmother, and they moved to Sherman County, and their house was 1 east and 5 south of when they moved there from where I live today. Now I had an aunt, my father's sister, her and her husband lives 7 miles south and 1 west.
Wow. Very
so,
close.
Dad had became a mechanic by that time, mostly at Ford dealers.
Okay.
And he was working in Alamosa, Colorado when he and Mother married. And when the bus mechanic job came up at our little school, he moved to Edson to take on the job as bus mechanic for him, and that's where I live, and that's where he met Mother. And I think it was in 1939, he bought the house that the post office is still in today that Mother ran for 41 years.
Okay.
And but by the early 40s, he went to work for Davis Brothers, it was Bill Davis at the time. He owned a Ford dealership and also had Massey Harris. And that was before they split the auto away from the ag equipment.
Oh, okay.
Well, in 1944, the Massey Harris got a government grant to build 500 self-propelled combines to sell to custom harvesters during the Second World War. these machines, they had to sign a contract that they would harvest at least 2,000 acres of combine. And mind you, this was with combines with 12-foot draper headers that weren't very nice. The header lift was manual. You had to deal like a ship guiding. And to lift the header. And you sit there, but he went in 44 with Jones Brothers, who got 3 combines from this dealer. And Dad was a mechanic there, and they figured they'd need a mechanic because he had to be real complicated. And so Dad went with them that first year, and he had a truck. And he took his truck, and they paid the driver to drive his truck, and they wanted him in the field running the combine and working on things that broke down. And that was 1944, and they started about 50 miles south of Wichita Falls, Texas.
Yeah.
And they finished west of Wofford City, North Dakota.
Okay.
And imagine this, because there was virtually no pavement,
Yeah.
no paved roads. But Dad knew all the shortcuts by the time I got going. And so we knew where all the shortcuts were. Dad's run, and I was born in 1944. Well, Dad went back then and worked for the dealer that winter. And during the war, they had price set on new equipment. And Massey built a lot more combines in that second year. And if he took them and ran them for a while, then the dealer could sell them for more than if they were new.
Really?
Yeah. And so he ran combines, and he cut at Alva, Oklahoma.
Okay.
And then he moved to Goodland, Kansas. And he cut mainly for the dealer there. And then he took the combines and worked between Lemon, South Dakota, and Bowman, North Dakota.
Okay.
Now, people in those days didn't have to have the wheat done the day before it was ready. They were real, you know, they were, he could sit there and run. He ran about 4 months on the wheat run in 3 locations.
Okay.
And so that was a lot easier then. He ran some, when he quit his deal with the dealership and went on his own, he didn't like the machines that replaced the 21As. And I think that was 26 and 27 Massey Harris's. And so he bought an Albert combine and had half interest in an international combine. And one of those international combines was the first combine I got to run on my own at 12. But Dad's crews were mostly young men during the war. I mean, high school age, or you know, and they had a lot of problems with these young boys when they first went south with heat stroke and stuff.
Oh, really?
No cabs, no air
Yeah.
conditioning,
More
or
used
any
to
of that. And it was largely because they weren't eating well. So, and prior to that time, the farmers' wives usually fixed them a meal at noon.
Okay.
And that was quite a job when the crews got larger. So Dad started furnishing the meals for the guys. And for a long time, they paid them by what was known as sickle time. And because they figured that no one was making money if the combines were cut.
Gotcha.
But after the Second World War was over, then Dad started hiring mostly veterans from the Second World War.
Okay.
And a lot of them came back and were probably the most employable people.
Yeah.
Their rewards in the service were alcohol and cigarettes. And So he had a lot of crews like that, and they were, some of them were pretty nice guys, but they didn't have family left, and
Yeah, it's
they had been through the war. In mid-60s, we ended up with a lot of wheat and no place to go with it.
Mm-hmm.
And they came out with the soil bank program. And in 56, there wasn't a lot of crop. 57, we didn't go out that year because there was virtually no wheat.
Mm-hmm.
We did a little work locally, and my older brother at that year had to do his active duty in the ROTC program.
Mm-hmm.
In 58, we bought an 82 Massey Harris 14-foot header, and we had a truck, and we went with got one of our neighbors to bring his combine and truck, and we went on the harvest run, and in 58, and then in 59, another neighbor wanted to go with us, and I think that was the year I was 13. And Dad got where he couldn't do much when we were up there, kind of got sick, and so I drove him home from Montana at 13 in a pickup.
Oh, wow.
But we all just, I think that's true even today, the outfits kids get to work early.
Mm-hmm.
And so we bought a second 82 in 1960, and we ran those through 64. And my older brother graduated from law school that year and went the harvest run that year with us. And then when he stayed in Montana, they had a late crop, finished all that up, and sold the trailer house and one of the combines up there so he'd have enough money to go to his job in Washington, D.C. And he worked in the patent office, and one of the things that got him his job after doing patent work after he got out of school, or out of working in the patent department, was his wife had made a painting of him on his combine, and it was hanging in his office when they came to interview him, and it was a Massey combine, and he ended up being their patent and trademark attorney for years.
Huh. That's
So I
interesting.
failed the company in '88. And anyway, in '65, it was dumped in my lap.
Okay.
Didn't have much left.
Okay.
It had a negative net worth. And went in and talked to my old banker, and he loaned me money to buy 2 new-year-old 410 Massey Harris combines from Norman Ham, who used to run Hamtown and ran about 10 combines through the 50s. I was the only kid on campus at KU that had a combine in the parking lot.
I bet you were.
But I ran those 2 410s in 65 and 6, and 67 I bought a third one. Dad thought I'd lost my mind because the 2 I bought had 16-foot headers.
Oh, wow.
And nobody needed a header that big.
Really?
Yeah.
That's what he thought.
And it was because you couldn't go through Nebraska with more than a 14-foot header because they had a 15-foot width restriction.
Because at that time, did you load them kind of like those pictures you were showing me
Well, we just drove them on.
on with the header?
Now,
on?
I bought trailers from Norman Ham. They were pipe trailers he'd made. And so we could just run them on with the headers on and go.
On the trailer?
Yeah. And that was a lot faster way to go.
Yeah.
And so we had those, and we ran those machines. And in '69, when we got to Dodge City, went in, and my neighbor was running a bunch of 510s at that time with diesel engines, and we really didn't think we need diesel till we had one. But we traded those 3 back to them, and that was a company store at the time, but we traded those 2 3 410s for 2 510s with 20-foot headers. We just thought they were huge
Yeah.
at the time. And we ran those two machines till late in '72, and there wasn't much left. They had over 4,000 hours apiece on them by then. But we went out the winter before my father died in '68, and so I didn't go back to school.
Okay.
I'd gone 1 year to law school.
Okay.
And I took we took those 510s out and worked in the fall in the desert for my first 3 years out of school. And then in '70, we leased 2 more 510s in '71 from one of our neighbors that got to run the prototype 760 Massey's. And we ran them just in wheat harvesting. We took the other 2 to the desert and ran that fall again. But in '72, we purchased 2 used 2-year-old ones. So we ran 4 machines in '72. And in August of '72, my brother Gary was taking 2 of them to work barley in the San Luis Valley, and we're taking the other 2 to Montana. And one of the kids following him hauling the second combine tried to make a corner that he missed on a gravel detour in Nebraska and turned it over, wrecked it. So, and that was the day before I'd gone up to a dealer off on a gravel road in the middle of no place, and he had one of the new 760s. They built 500 in '72. So went into that dealer and asked him if he could find us another one. Well, they had one more in that district, and their field man found it over in North Dakota. So we bought 2 of those and sent one to Colorado, and we ran one then in Montana to finish our work up there. Gee, they seemed huge.
Really?
They had 24-foot headers. And they had big tires. Well, I stayed home that fall and we didn't have a lot of work until December. And we had 40 days that didn't get above freezing and a lot of snow. Well, that was before corn born. The corn stood straight. So I told one of the neighbors before I went up to ski after Christmas if he needed help to give me a call. 2 days later he called. So Gary told me, he says, I think you better get home. And so we went home and we ran it every month that winter. And we finished up corn around the fields in April, and we were cutting in May in Oklahoma with those 760s. And in '73, we bought a used 760 that was one of the prototypes that they'd built in '71. And we traded that prototype then in '74 for 2 more. So we were back up to 4 machines in '74. And then so we had the good machines and stuff when the price of grain went up during the Russian grain deal. And we were able to cut a lot of grain and do well, and had a lot of nice kids work for us over the years. And so we traded all 4 of those in '76 for 4 new ones. And then we started trading every other year with the Massey's. In 1988, and that's after the organization here got started. Case had a fly-in trying to get all the guys to come look at their factory, go on a factory tour. The first night there, my brother calls me that works for Massey and said the SOBs went and filed for bankruptcy today, but they kicked them out because they didn't have the paperwork right. You better go get your trade-ins back off the dealer lot and take them home. So I call my younger brother at home, and he goes and gets them, brings them home. I had friends that had some stuff at dealers that were company stores that they lost their equipment to the bankruptcy court ended up taking them. So that's when I changed to Case, and we've traded them every year since then.
Okay.
And I think this year will have us to 180 Case combines we bought from the same dealer.
Wow.
But and most of our customers have been with us long term.
Really?
They become family to you.
Yeah.
And we go to the same places every year because we know the merchants and we know where we need to buy supplies and all that, and that makes it nice. It's the industry is changing now, and but the main asset a custom cutter can have is still the people he knows.
Mm-hmm.
In the early years when I was running, if you were looking for work, you talked to the elevator man, you talked to the fuel man, and you went to the bank, cashed a check, so your banker would call your banker, make sure you were okay, because he knew everybody that needed help, and that made it easy. One of the things that we went through a period where it was hard to find work, and there seemed to be an oversupply of guys out here. A lot of the new guys figured that the way to find work was go to talk to people that already had a cutter. But we found that you're better off to talk to a farmer that had a machine, was got tired of the dirt and working on it. Mm-hmm. And that was where your best jobs came from. And I don't have very many customers that we haven't cut for a long time, like 20 years or more.
Wow.
And it's nice to have those long-term relationships. I don't know, I'm a little concerned about the direction of everything now because things are costing a lot, but you know, when I bought those 510s, I got to wonder, or 410s,
mm-hmm.
the first combines I bought, it was a tremendous price.
Yeah.
But the other side of it was, it seemed like an awful lot.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And, but this halfway through the second season in '66, we had those combines paid for, and we replaced one of the trucks. They were smaller gas trucks, you know. When we went to the tandem trucks, we thought they were pretty big, but they were gas engines. Mm-hmm. The last set of tandems I bought that had gas engines was a mistake. I should have bought diesels that year. Those trucks had 477 cubic inch gas engines, and they loved gas.
Oh yeah.
And that was about the time of the oil embargo.
Okay.
And it was years before I spent as much as I did that last year running those on fuel. But in the long term now, the guys have got to be good businessmen. They've got to watch their expenses real close. And I feel that we're having a little trouble with that right now because everything, we're not able, our farmers aren't getting paid well enough that we can charge what we need to. Mm. And that happens a lot. I think in ag, the farmers are going to do well for 2 or 3 years, and then things kind of nosedive for another long period. And we're getting close, I think, to where it's going to come back. But you never know for sure.
Yeah. What keeps you going through, like, I mean, you've kind of mentioned there's been some hard years. What keeps you going year after year?
We have all these people that depend on us mm-hmm. to get their crop in. I've had farmers over the years that didn't think we'd be ready till I got there. Mm-hmm. I'd have trouble getting them to go out and check it. You know, but they rely on you that much, and they depend on you, and they've all treated us nice. had very few problems. One of the things about going back to the same area, if there's someone that's not paying people very well, not treating them well, if they see you talking to them, they'll come by and tell you you don't want to cut for them.
Yeah.
But there's not
Yeah.
many farmers like that. I know I go once in a while to a party with my wife in Denver that's got a lot of surgeons, and they want to know when we go out and get our contracts lined out, and I says, if word of mouth isn't good enough, I'm cutting for the wrong people.
That's
And
true.
you know, you have you develop these relationships over the long term. Yeah.
Kind of mean a lot.
Yeah, it does. One year we pulled up the stop sign down in Oklahoma, and the kid in uniform came over, Oklahoma Patrol, got to look at it. That kid had worked for me one year.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so, you know, it's nice. You've got to be really concerned about the health and well-being of your kids all the time. And it's a lot more rewarding for me to work with young kids because they learn so much out here. And after they work a year with us, they can hold down jobs.
Mm-hmm.
2 years, they can get a job about any place.
Mm-hmm.
They develop mechanical skills. They become responsible,
Yeah.
I would say. You know, they get a better work ethic. And some days you'll think they don't have very good work ethic.
Uh-huh.
But when they have a large trouble understanding the urgency when we do work because we're so weather related.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to believe in global warming because, or that. When I went out to college, we had the impending ice age.
Uh-huh.
And I had a professor that was mad about that because he said if you weren't going to work to prove that theory, you wouldn't get any funding for research. So he had that, but it was good.
So, okay, how many employees did you usually hire?
I usually hire 6.
Okay.
Have enough family now that, and I'm getting ready to turn it over to my nephew and my son.
Mm-hmm.
And my son has been going on harvest since he was 17 days.
Start them
My
young, right? You
Yeah.
gotta start them young.
My nephew has been with me, I think, 32, 34 years now. So I'm in hopes that it stays in the family and keeps going. We have several farms that we're on the next generation or 2 down.
Mm-hmm.
One of our farmers in Montana, when we started cutting for their father, their grandfather was still at the farm, and he would tell us stories about going out to Homestead with his parents when he was 10 years old.
Wow.
And the Indians were packing up their teepees and hooking the horses and moving off. But they were, you know, it's strange now because we know all the neighbors, most places we cut, have a lot of nice visits in the middle of a road, in the middle of no place.
Yeah. So if you could, what advice would you give to like your son or your nephew starting out in a custom harvesting business?
Well, they're gonna have to start using a computer to do the bookkeeping because I'm getting tired of doing it. And they don't want to do anything if they can't do it on a computer or push buttons.
Uh-huh. But a lot of your business work like that, has that been self-taught?
Well, I have an accounting major,
Uh-huh.
a
Oh, okay.
business major. But, you know, you learn a lot. And I think you probably learn more from those that you're around and
Uh-huh.
working with. I had, when I was in college, I was one of the few kids that sent money home. But the guy I worked for ran wholesale frozen food service to all restaurants and the dorms and sororities and fraternities and all that. I knew all the house mothers. And it was a kind of fun deal because I learned a lot just working for him. He ran a good business, was good. I learned a lot at school. I have an aversion to computers because when I was in pilot programs to teach computers to business majors, and we had a gal from the math department teaching it that thought you needed to be a math major to do computer programming. And we had IBM punch cards. You probably don't know what one of those are even. But we're running now where the young kids have that, it's just ingrained in them to do that. And a lot of our control systems on the machinery now are computer controlled. And so that's a real important facet of the business right now. They're trying a lot of automation now. We ran a machine last year for engineering at Case that they've introduced this self-adjusting machine now as it goes through the field. I really think my nephew can do a better job than their automation can, but he couldn't quite do as good as they did in the soybeans on the one we were running. But I've had other guys that were running the other ones say that, well, I didn't do well in that crop, so I don't know. But it's still a work in progress, and it's more in learning the steps you have to do to get it set properly so it works well.
Yeah.
And the problem now is that the urban people still think we're farming with a spade and a hoe.
Yeah.
And they don't realize the automation that we have and the intricacies of the electrical systems and control systems on the machines. And quite frankly, these younger kids are way better at doing that stuff. You can't hire many guys my age that could even work anymore, but let alone do those type of things and learn them. And I see this in the trucking industry where a lot of the older guys aren't going to stay there because of the electronic log system. They don't want to learn something new. And some of the best old truck drivers I knew probably couldn't hardly read and write.
Yeah.
They get that truck where it needed to be every day. And so we see that. One of the things that I think has been kind of thorn in our side is meeting Department of Transportation rules for our kids to drive trucks. And the reason it's a thorn in our side is not because of safety, it's because their view of driving a truck is urban driving and pavement. And we drive on very little pavement. The only serious injury I've had in these years has been a kid rear into another truck and lost a foot. I've had one injury like that. I had one other workers' comp claim where a rattlesnake bit one of the boys, and he was a wildlife biology major.
Oh no.
But other than that, we've been reasonably safe. And you've got to start teaching that right away, because if you've got 6 or 8 people working around machinery, you've got to have set procedures in before they ever start an engine or move something, because you never know when someone else is going to be up there. And so you've got to stress safety first.
When you bring your employment out, that's kind of what you go through.
And the young boys we get, most of them I like there about the 1st of April. We spend the first month just working on CDL and driving, and that's the main thing we do now. We do a little work in the shop at that time frame, and the reason we do is getting them learning to work together and around machinery. And most of these kids have worked around a little bit of machinery. A lot of them are farm kids. And so they do pretty good, but they haven't worked in a situation where there's a bunch of people around before. And they do pretty good if you can find jobs for all of them all the time.
Right.
Because they're off doing their job, when you're around the shop. And there's not an awful lot of that work, but there's some. And you get these young boys in, and their mothers have always done all their laundry and waited on them. And you've got to teach them how to order in the restaurants. They didn't get eat out much, and all of a sudden we're eating out most of the time. They have not had to pick up after themselves. They've not done house cleaning. They've not done any of that. And all of a sudden they're doing a lot of cleaning, a lot of house cleaning. They got to do the maintenance in their trailer house and their trucks and everything, And so it's a learning process. My young guys, I like all of them to have. They'll have a job by fall that they kind of decide that's the one they really like doing. But you want them to know how to do every job.
Yeah.
And because you're not being fair to them if you just teach them to do one job, I don't think. Now, I'll have some that come that only want to do one.
Okay.
But for the most part, I encourage them to learn to do all the jobs. It's just better for them in the long run in the future.
Do you notice a big change in them personally when they first come out to then when the season's over?
Oh, yeah. There's a big change. And I don't know, I've had several mothers call and thank me that their son came home. He even picked up his dirty clothes after himself. And he made his bed this morning.
Yeah,
Things like that.
I think that's a really, cool thing when I look at like guys like you give someone maybe a chance that maybe no one else has yet, and you teach them a lot of life skills more than just how to drive a combine or.
You do, and you teach them to be polite to people. I tell them in these little towns, those young girls waiting on us in the restaurant got that job because their dad's one of the biggest farmers out here. Oh!
That's funny. That makes them act more polite then?
Oh, yeah. And we hire some English and boys and Irish boys from time to time. Okay. And I don't know why, but once in a while we'll get one that just acts like he's a superior being to anyone that's doing waiting and that. And you got to get over that because those kids that are working in these places are doing the best they can. Right. And they try hard. So you try to help them back. I know one that and we have different customs than they do. I know one of the boys ordered tea first day in Oklahoma. And the girl brings him iced tea, and she can see his face drunk. Says, "Is it this what you want?" "No, I wanted hot tea." "Oh, okay." And she took the iced tea over in the microwave and zapped it front back.
That's hot tea. I guess another question is, your family travels with you, right?
A lot. My wife, after we had the breast cancer battle, felt she wasn't giving enough back and went back to nursing. She's an OR nurse, and I hope she retires in March.
Have you seen a lot of growing up, did you see a lot of value in like being there with your family, with your brother?
Oh yeah. And I think I was 10, I decided I was going on harvest. Now that wasn't my parents' decision. Mom always stayed home and ran the post office. She ran our local post office 41 years. And I grabbed a little metal suitcase my older brother used to take his stuff to his basketball equipment, the basketball games. And I packed it and hid it in the truck and slept against the door. But you learn a lot of skills that other kids around you don't have. Yeah. I know my son, his first year in college, came across one of the kids that had a flat tire. He didn't know how to change a tire, what to do. he stopped over and showed him how to change a tire. He felt sorry for the kid. He said, I can't believe they don't know that. One of the kids asked him what he's doing when he's cleaning his car out. And said, oh, I'm detailing my car. Well, what's that? You know, they never cleaned the car.
A lot of difference,
So, you know, it's just a different situation for them. And as we become more and more urban, the kids don't get the early chances that farm kids do. I know JJ decided about 8 that he could drive the pickup. And so I asked him, we had to road the combines about 40 miles. And I asked him, I said, do you think you can follow me? Sure. Well, about halfway we stopped, went in town for lunch. And he said, man, boy, Dad, I'm really tired. This is hard. But he had to set up like this.
Yeah, he would. Hard work trying to peer out.
Yeah, I know. One day we were out driving and we met the elderly couple that had, I think it was their granddaughter along, practice driving. And here JJ is, you can't hardly see him, and the dog's sitting by him watching everything. But no, they learn earlier, and it's good for them to get the chance because they become better drivers when they're older and that. And it doesn't matter when they start driving, that's probably their most dangerous time. And if they wait till they're 17 or 18, you can't tell them as much.
Yeah.
And
and I guess I kind of wanted to touch on another topic of your living arrangements now. Do you guys take house trailers? Is that where you guys? Okay.
In early days when I was little, we took cots and we had bedrolls that we put in these military duffel bags. And we'd usually when we get to the farm and get to work, they'd have an old wooden granary or something that we could sweep out, and we'd set our cots up in there.
Yeah.
I can remember Dad cut at Hettinger, Haines, North Dakota. And we used to sleep in the dance hall at the bar.
Really?
And on the nights they'd have a band, which was usually Saturday night or Friday night, why then we just set our cots up out in the back of a truck and roll the tarp back, and that was home.
Okay. Yeah, I was curious. I didn't know how your dad, if they'd slept out in the truck bed or if they'd...
Well, we finally started using trailer houses in the early 60s.
Okay.
And a lot of them bought the old Spartan trailer houses and used those, and some started using those in the 50s.
Okay.
But there was always never very good places most of the time to park. We like to park out on the farm.
Yeah.
But we all have places that we park for years. I think the place we park at Hobart now, we parked there since probably the mid-70s.
Wow.
And we're across the street from Walmart, but we're the only ones there. And we're on our 3rd or 4th landlord.
Oh, wow.
There. And so, we've always had nice people there to this day.
They know your spot.
Yeah.
I think my last question is just kind of what year did you join the U.S. Custom Harvester Organization?
The first year.
And then what you've gained by being a member?
A lot of worry. I always worry about the guys because they don't understand the seriousness of rules and regulations until it's too late. And when you need to get them going, they just can't believe that what they're trying to do is ever going to happen because it just doesn't make sense to them. And they don't understand the urban mentality. They also don't understand why people don't trust young kids, our youngsters. and at that level. And I don't know, they always think the youngsters are bad drivers, but in our situation, if you got a farm kid that's been out there driving, you don't worry. The problem is now is that farmers have 2 kids instead of 6.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was a lot of large families when I was growing up, and so you had, they always have 1 or 2 kids that they could let go on the harvest trail. Well, those kids already understood most of the safety stuff that you
Right.
do out here. And so you didn't have to spend a lot of time training with them. But that's not the case today. You better assume that they don't know anything and start from ground zero on your training. And you have to, anymore, if there's an accident close to us with the grain truck hauling out the fields, I take the kids over and show them, just so they know
Can see it.
and can see and understand the hazards. Because a lot of times they don't understand the hazards.
Yeah.
And we have the other thing, they need to be a little more aware of the financial end of the world. I've had a lot of friends that have gotten accustomed to debt. And I don't think that's good for them, because they can't weather the bad times if they have too much debt. And it's caused a lot of problems out here for a lot of the guys. Right now, it's getting to be a tough enough business, it's hard to find help. And if you aren't a good teacher, you're gonna have more problems. I always wished after we got into it that I'd probably taken some education courses. One of my old college roommates and one of my better friends, he's a retired school teacher now, but he used to come out before they had children and help me train my crews. He'd go south with me as soon as he finished his school year and work with the kids, and he was just wonderful with them. And some of the guys don't understand the importance of training. They expect the kids to do things that seem like common sense to us, but we grew up with it. And these kids did not grow up with it. And so you've got to assume that they don't know that.
Right.
It's not that hard, other than that you've got to recognize the hazards. And you got to do refresher courses. I've had that one serious injury on that one kid, and you know, it wouldn't have been so bad, but we covered these topics several times. And he just ran into dust cloud. Well, another one of my trucks was in that dust cloud. Fortunately, they were both empty. But it was pretty sad for us. I sure hate to have to call a parent and tell them their kids are really, really tough.
Well, I think that's all I have, unless you had anything else.
Well, I could probably talk for 3 days. You know, we've had a lot of experiences over the years. I tell you though, the young guys that are getting started out here need to understand how important it is to make friendships with these, not only their customers, but some of the business people in these communities, because that'll get them where they have people that look after you.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of people that looked after me in my youth, and it was nice. I had a job over at Brewster for one of the guys that drove a school bus when my dad was bus mechanic. And well, I think he and his brother both drove that, and that was one of the good jobs that I first had. And he was a perfectionist, and he worked on me to no end, and I really respected old George for that. God, he was nice.
Spend the time.
he taught you the value of doing a good job. And you really love and respect those people. My guy in Nebraska, we kept for him till he died. And I started that job in '66, and we're still cutting for his kids.
Wow.
And I had one farmer at home that retired last year, rented the ground out, and my dad cut for his grandfather in the '40s. So, you know, you had a long history with a lot of these people. And
It's been the relationships that have.
Yeah. And, you know, it seemed like a lot of the guys were viewing each other as real competitors out here.
Mm-hmm.
And really, we complement one another and working with each other has sure made life better for everyone.
Yeah.
And through the organization, we have developed a lot of friendships and knew a lot of people. We got in a property tax battle. I was the only guy paying property tax on combines in our county in about, must have been 80, 81 maybe. And we ended up testifying on stuff and ended up in a court case that went to the Supreme Court in the state with the tax, against the tax board.
Mm-hmm.
And they went over and got them to rule against us after we'd already heard the case. They couldn't understand why they didn't exempt us. And they had the ability to check stuff that they weren't doing. And so this meeting that they went over and had with the Supreme Court justice after the hearings that we participated in, we didn't get to read about it or talk to them. Anyway, they got a ruling against us. So, and just happened that one of the young ladies that was a secretary for one of the Supreme Court justices used to come drive trucks for us in the summer when we cut.
Really?
And she called me and says, "You guys are going to get taken advantage of on this deal." And they came over and talked to him. So I went down right after the first year then, and I went in to the Board of Tax Appeals, talked to the chairman. I thought he was the only one there. He called the whole board in there and they talked to me for over 2 hours. And they asked me, "Well, what are you going to do?" And I says, "Everything I own's on wheels. And I can move to Oklahoma in 2 days." Now, not only that, I didn't put my combines on the roll. Wow, you can't do that. Well, you can check 1099 forms and one of their attorneys for the state told me that, but they never did it. And I said, "You can do that." So most of those combines do a little custom work in my county. And so if they're all on the roll, my taxes will be a lot less too. Oh, and if I go to Oklahoma, it'll be way less. I can build a house and shop in 10 years on the savings from your rates are so much higher. Oh, they went over the next day and told the legislature they need to change a little wording so they exempt us. And it was sad because they said among other things, we didn't have a significant tie to the land, and that gal that was one of their attorneys asked me who that old guy with the old hats is sitting over there. And I told her that's John Cogswell. He owns 26 sections of grass south of my house, 9 miles. And you're arguing he doesn't have a significant tie to the land.
Yeah.
But she's the one that gave me the hints on what we probably should say. So if you're just nice and polite to everyone, you usually do better.
Yeah,
And
I like that.
you'll
Good
all
advice.
have people that are surprising. They'll step up
Help you
and
out.
guide you. Yeah.
Well, thanks for
Well,
joining me today.
I hope that's helped.
Yeah.
If, I don't know of any more, well, there's a lot of stories I can tell,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I don't know of any that might be able to.
No, they are. They're very interesting. Thank you for all the work you've done for the industry and for the organization. I know it's.
We did a lot of work on this CDL rules in the early days, and I was really disappointed that they didn't exempt us. Dole got it in the bill that got us exempted at the Senate side. He was involved in the House and Senate conferees, and the chairman of the House Transportation Committee was from downtown Los Angeles little area, and he had his head aide on that. That gal told us that she didn't eat any farmers, that Safeway made her food.
Oh no.
And I think Doug was with me on that one. But she went in and changed wording after it was agreed upon, and they kept us from getting exempted. And I always thought we should have been exempted because they talk about safety, but we can't, because of the economic end of it, we can't not be safe. It just eats us up if we aren't. So that's some of that, and it's hard to get them to understand those things.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess I better not take up any more of your time.
Oh no, you're good.
So hopefully you guys can get a few more of them.
Yeah, we will. Thank you.